I feel more alive than I've ever felt before.
Was it a long-term plan to leave the United States?
Living abroad had been like a 20-year dream of mine. I actually ended up getting sucked into high control religion in college. I got married really young, started having babies, wasn't encouraged to have a career. I got a free ride to get my master's degree, and I quit it because the church told me, well, you're a wife now, and you should be focusing on your husband and ministry.
Andie didn't escape corporate America. Andie escaped crazy church control America.
You don't realize everything that's being stripped of you, from you. When I was in America, I felt underwater.
If you had to choose between happiness or success, which would you pick?
I would choose probably happiness. I'm so lucky to have a partner that we really just respect and enjoy each other, because money can't fix that.
What's the most liberating decision that you've been able to make?
Just learning to listen to myself and believe in myself is a big part of it.
Welcome back to 101 Ways Out. I'm your host, Vanessa Juby. Today's guest, Andie Eggimann, is a move abroad expert whose story is a masterclass in reclaiming identity. Andie spent over a decade in a high-control religious environment, a system that dismantled her confidence and buried her career aspirations under rigid expectations for women. But as Andie began to deprogram and find her way home to herself, she noticed those same high-control markers leaking into the broader American landscape through the troubling rise of Christian nationalism. She recognized the patterns, the demand for a specific social hierarchy, the narrowing of what it means to be a true American, and a political ideology that uses faith to justify control. Realizing she was essentially trading one high control cage for another, Andie, her husband, and their 5 children moved overseas to find air and freedom. In this conversation, we talk about the logistics of moving a family of 7, the trauma of the programming, and why leaving the United States was the final step in her journey to live a more humane life. If you've been feeling the walls of the country closing in on you, this episode is your reminder that you are allowed to choose your own freedom. I have been so inspired with this conversation and with Andie that she and I have stayed in touch, and I want to share a little bit more with you in the outro. So please enjoy the conversation, enjoy the learning, take it as a real warning sign, and then stick around to the end so I can give you a little bit more of an update. Thanks for being here. Well, welcome back, everybody. Today on 101 Ways Out, I'm really excited to introduce Andie Eggimann. She is a trip designer, move abroad expert, and creator of the Get Me Out of Here workshop, a first step for anyone wondering if life abroad could work for them. In 2019, Andie and her husband moved overseas with their 5 kids, becoming accidentally nomadic before landing in Portugal for 3 years. There are a lot of limiting beliefs that people have, people that I speak with, and I'm sure I have them too. There are many I'm working through. But one of the things I hear a lot is, if it was just me and my husband or just me and my partner, I could definitely move abroad, but not with kids. I have to wait till they're grown, all this. But clearly you did it, and they were not grown by any stretch of the imagination when you moved abroad. Okay, well, we'll get into all of that because I'm really excited to learn more. I only have 1 kid, so probably much simpler for me, but I'm really interested. The expert says it. Where are you on your life journey at this moment in time?
I feel more alive than I've ever felt before. I'm in my mid-40s. I just feel like I'm really coming home to myself in a lot of ways, and moving abroad has been a big part of that for me. Yeah, I have 5 teenagers at the moment, so that's also a chaotic part. One is about to be 20, so
gosh.
Yeah, it's a little wild.
That's a handful.
Officially.
So I'm in my mid-40s too, so I can relate to that time of life and how different things start to feel. What made you guys decide to leave? Was it a long-term plan to leave the United States, or was it like, we're just going to go try it out for a while?
Living abroad had been like a 20-year dream of mine. And once we had a bunch of kids, it got put on the back burner. We had some just like tragedies in our circle. And so we began to ask some of those questions. That's like in my mid-30s at that point. Just those questions of like, are we doing what we want to be doing? Like, life is short. Like, we're healthy, our kids are healthy. Are we doing what we want to be doing? And the answer was really no. We were just sort of on that upward mobility, make more, spend more train that happens really easily in America. And so when we began to examine sort of our own values, we realized, no, this is not what we want. And that's when we began exploring our options. We first started traveling abroad internationally before we decided to move abroad. Like when we began asking those questions, it still seemed way out of my imagination that we could ever live abroad as a family of 7.
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot. It's not, I mean, gosh, I can't even imagine traveling with that big of a family. I mean, it seems like so much to worry about and to think about.
Yeah. It's a logistical miracle.
No kidding. Did you go explore a lot of places before you decided to move?
Yeah, we did. Our first international trip was to China, as one does.
Ah, yes. Is that a thing? I keep hearing this.
Nobody does that.
No.
Yeah.
Well, not for the first one, but I literally spoke with a woman a couple weeks ago who she was like, yeah, I wanted to leave and China was the obvious place to go. Like it was the easiest place to move to. And so when you said that, I was like, oh, I guess that does make sense. Yes.
That's funny.
So she moved
I
there
have never
first.
heard that. Oh, I love it. Yeah. I wonder if that had if she had family or who knows.
No,
That's really interesting.
she just got a teaching job that ended up not to be the teaching job she signed up for. But so that was a whole other disaster, but it ended up working out, thankfully. But just crazy though. Like, yeah, she got a teaching job. So that's how she left.
That's amazing. Okay.
Okay. So China, first trip outside the United States.
Yeah. I took this travel course about using points and credit cards and, all of that.
Cool.
And then also how to find really good flight deals. And so I immediately took the information that I learned from that and I found tickets that were really cheap to China. And I was like, we're going to go to China for Christmas. So that was how it all began. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Oh my gosh. That is really cool. And it's so interesting that you talk about that course and that kind of walked you through how to do those things. I've seen some of that. I've never done it. So it's really cool to hear that it helped you. And I think you also just talked to one of the things that I have also read a lot of people say, even as I post, yeah, you don't have to work in corporate America. There are other things you can do. I'm talking to people that are doing it. People are like, well, that's just privilege. And well, actually, not a lot of it, not all of it. So it's interesting too, because there are lots of ways to do things, right? There are lots of ways to figure it out.
Yeah, there's so many different options for what you could do for work or just, yeah. I mean, one of our first places that we stayed when we launched abroad was with Trusted House Sitters. So we had a 4-month free house sit. They're free accommodations while we took care of a dog. So
nice.
There's just a lot of interesting options out there. But back to the international travel, we went also to South Africa with the fam and several places in Europe, and we got to pop through Egypt and see the pyramids because we had a layover there. So yeah, we've been all over, which was cool.
That's
and
amazing.
That actually gave me confidence to realize my kids were going to be fine and do well. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Where did you go in South Africa?
We went to Kruger National Park. So we found tickets that only allowed us to be there for a week. Yeah, we found just really crazy deal from Italy, which is where we thought we were going to be. So anyway, it was we actually just went and saw the national park and that was really cool. We got about a day in Joburg. So yeah.
Oh, cool. That's amazing. Cool. I got to go to South Africa for a work trip. I was following my passion of travel and luxury and adventure. So I was working for this luxury adventure travel company and helped them launch their South Africa trips. And I ended up getting to go because of that launch. It was great. And then I took my husband back for our honeymoon because I was like, we have to go. It's amazing.
It's beautiful.
Isn't it so beautiful? And especially with your kids, they get to see the amazing wildlife. That's a dream I have now is I want to take my son.
Yeah, it was cool. And I think, we stayed in Marloth Park, which is this contained area. It's its own little township situation, but there are giraffes wandering around and non-dangerous animals. It's right below Kruger National Park. And so you can stay there and you can drive down the road and then you see a giraffe. It was
incredible.
Magical. So we actually just did self-drive safaris at Kruger and stuff like that. So I think that there's a lot of affordable options than people realize for doing a safari and seeing all the animals and stuff.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah, that's cool. I would never even think about that. Wow. I'd love that you figured out all these ways of doing these things. Let's get to know your background. Let's find out, like, because this is interesting to me, because like now we know you've been all over the world. You're living in a different country. You have a big family. You made it happen. So my question always then is like, what makes somebody be able to do that? Like, what are the experiences that you've had that make you who you are, right? So tell me about like where you grew up, how you grew up, what your parents did for a living, that sort of thing.
I grew up in the Atlanta suburbs, and I'm an only child. My mom was a preschool art teacher. My dad was a fireman. But my dad, I think, is where I got the wanderlust from. Like, he has like truck driver blood. Like, he wasn't ever a truck driver, but like we would take these massive road trips as I was growing up. Like, I remember just a lot of being in the back of white conversion van on the bed in the back because it was the 80s, and I'm like listening to my cassette tapes, and we're driving forever and ever and ever. So yeah, like I grew up traveling in the States, going on road trips and stuff like that. So I feel like my parents, they gave me the idea of travel as just a normal thing and seeing national parks and things like that. So growing up, because it was just me, I was just sort of literally along for the ride for these massive trips in different places. So yeah.
Oh, that's so neat. Is there any place that really stood out to you when you were little that you guys went to?
One big memory I have was I was a little bit older. I was 12, and my dad took me on a trip to San Francisco, and it just blew my mind, just like the trolley cars, which is really interesting now because I live near Lisbon, and Lisbon, like it has a bridge that looks a lot like the Golden Gate Bridge. It's got the trolleys. So it's very San Francisco vibes there. So I just remember being like blown away by San Francisco. It felt like another world from like Georgia suburbs, just like landscapes and big city life and stuff like that. So that was really impactful.
Yeah. And the weather and the foliage and everything in San Francisco is so different from Atlanta. Yeah.
Yeah. And like seeing the seals, laying around, and it was really fun.
Oh, it's amazing. What about your schooling? Was there anything that seems interesting to you or like stood out to you about your education?
So it's been interesting parenting neurodivergent kids and then like figuring out myself that I have ADHD. So like as an adult, but the reason I mentioned that with schooling is as a little kid, I got stuck in like the gifted program, right? Like probably because I had ADHD as a woman, wasn't getting diagnosed at that stage of the world. And I think that when we go back to the topic of like confidence and like, how did I become the kind of person who's like, yeah, sure, I can do this. I mean, I was just in a public school system, but because I was sort of put in this, like, it's okay to be weird, it's okay to have creative ideas, like that was fostered in me.
Oh, cool.
And also I think being an only child sometimes really helps with confidence because there's nobody that your parents are comparing you to. They're like, it's you.
Yeah, that's
like,
amazing, remarkable.
Yeah. So it's been interesting, like reflecting, right? Reflecting and just being like, oh yeah, like my parents gave me a lot of confidence to just be myself and like have weird ideas and do them and no problem. So
I love that.
Yeah, I don't know. So my schooling was a little bit like that too.
That's so great. I love that so much. My kid is an only child, and I'm just thinking about like how much I adore him and how I'm like, you can do anything you want. Like, let's go foster whatever ideas you have. Let's foster whatever interests you have,
Yeah.
It's a delightful experience to be a parent.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. So I feel like that sort of, made me like, oh, sure, I can do it, which is a wonderful gift to give a child. And you don't have to be an only child to receive that from your parents, right? But yeah, I think it happens with only children just because your parents aren't like, and you're the productive one and this one's the silly one and, whatever, just all the sibling stuff. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my gosh, I love that so much. It's such a cool way of putting it. And I haven't heard anyone describe being an only child the way that you have just now. And I think it's such a cool thing. So I'm going to share that with my kid the next time he tries to guilt me into having another kid, which is not happening.
I definitely wanted siblings as a kid, you know,
Oh,
but
yeah.
there's benefits.
Yeah. Are there any other experiences that you feel like you had when you were growing up that kind of shaped who you are, who you became?
When I think about the move abroad stuff, I spent a lot of time with exchange students, like lots and lots of time with exchange students. So those were my friends. I mean, I had friends who weren't exchange students, but especially in high school, I was always hanging out with the exchange students. And then in college, I was always hanging out with the international students. I ended up majoring in cross-cultural studies. And I just think like the world has always fascinated me. So yeah, ever since I was little.
You mentioned college. Do you feel like a lot of people that I talk to say, you know, my parents expect me to go to college. Like there are other people that have different backgrounds with their parents' expectations. But do you feel like your parents had any specific expectations for you when you were growing up?
I definitely think they expected me to go to college, and the generation that I was growing up in and the school, you know, even it was a public school, but just, you know, just going was the thing that you did. It's interesting now, like being a mom, because several of my kids are going to do a gap year, which is very normal in Europe. That was never even an option. Like it
Right.
never crossed my mind to do anything besides graduate and go to college. I don't even remember it necessarily coming from my parents as much as it came from just school and like, this is what you do. And after you graduate, you go to college. Like, this is what you do, which I know wasn't always the norm in America. My dad went and got his degree like in his 40s, I think. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah. So I was the first one in my family to go. But yeah, I think most people our age maybe just got that expectation.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It does seem to be the case. And the folks that I've spoken with, it's just college is what we do. It's not really questioned. It's just part of it. But you're right. It was definitely that time period because even now, I think in the US, I'm hearing more and more conversations about you don't have to go to college. You could go to a trade school. It could be something, you know, it could be different. So it's definitely interesting to see how generationally those things change.
Yeah, I think a lot of us too in our generation. I was talking with somebody about this the other day, but just the expectation that like, and then you buy a house and that's a really good financial decision.
Right.
Which for us, it didn't turn out to be that way. So like, you know, I think our generation experienced like a lot of upheaval. We bought right before the recession. So
was it 2008? Like right that time frame?
Yeah, we bought. Yeah, basically we bought in 2006, and then immediately our house started losing value, like months later.
No.
You know, yeah. So I think that some of those things that for us we were told like this is what it is to be an adult, and I mean corporate. I know you talk a lot about corporate. I think like get a good corporate job and do this and do that. Like that was what we were taught.
Yeah.
And
yeah, absolutely. I mean, same.
Yeah.
So it's cool. Like I love your background. I appreciate you sharing it. I feel like, you know, everyone is so different and there are so many different variations of upbringings that people have. It does seem like a lot of folks I speak with, not all, but a lot of folks, they're not first generation college students, but you are. I am as well. And neither of my parents, right, like went to college. My dad was a truck driver. So you talk about the truck driver like blood that your dad, you know, when you said that, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So I can relate to a lot of what you're sharing. And it's so fascinating to me, like how varied so many of our experiences are. And yet there's something that happens or something that's special or something that we are able to do that allows us to kind of think a little bit differently. So I know you mentioned you didn't go the traditional corporate path. Tell me a little bit about what was like what happened with your life choices and your journey after you got out of school and all of that. Like where did life take you?
That's like a little bit of a rabbit hole that we may or may not want to explore. But I actually ended up getting sucked into high control religion in college. And so like I got married really young, started having babies, wasn't encouraged to have a career. So that
okay. So
was
in the Atlanta, were you in the Atlanta area
no,
still?
I was
Oh,
in Washington State. I went to school in Washington State.
whoa.
So
No, I
yeah.
would love to hear about
So
it. Like, I would love to hear about this. I think it is a growing, I want to say problem. I hope that doesn't offend you, but I do feel like it's a growing problem.
religion isn't a problem. High control religion is absolutely a problem.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
are two
And so
different things.
was it targeting? Did you feel like it was targeting kids or no? Like, how did that even happen?
Yeah. So I grew up going to church and my faith was important to me in like a very healthy church that was typical. I don't know. I guess when I differentiate, I just say typical because it wasn't a high control situation that I grew up in. And it was a really like life-giving part of my growing up. And then I went to college. And I think because my faith was important to me, as I look back and wonder, like, how did I get sucked into this? Because I was like an artist. I loved music festivals. I was like very independent as a high schooler. And so I feel still a little baffled. Like, how did I get sucked into this? And like, what was the hook? Right? Because there's always basically nobody intends to join a high control situation. Like
Yeah.
you accidentally find yourself in these situations, right? So I think it was because my faith was important to me. And so the rhetoric around it was like, here, join our community, like, and you're susceptible because you, like, for me, I moved across the country for college. So I was looking for relationships. I was looking for community. And the way it was talked about was like, if you're serious about your faith, like here, like we do these really deep Bible studies and blah, 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 you know? And so for
Yeah.
me, it was just sort of a natural, like, oh, great. I'm serious about my faith. This is important to me, you know? And then by the time that you're in it, like it's such a slow thing with high control groups, you know, like it's not just religion. There's high control political groups. There's high control personal development groups. There's all
Mm.
kinds of groups that
You
are
know, I
like
think
this.
also any like relationships, right? Like if you think about an
There's,
abusive
yes,
marriage or something,
cult of one.
it's, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the red flags are all the same. That's what's so fascinating to me. You know, they're the same between, yeah, like one-on-one in a relationship or in a group. You know, a lot of it has to do with like doubting your intuition, like don't trust yourself.
Ooh,
Like,
yeah.
so that's one of the big things is that in my situation, I learned to question myself and the things that I wanted to do. And so you can easily be talked out of anything that is important to you because the larger group says, oh, no, that's, you shouldn't do that because you should do this, you know? And it was really that particular group was very limiting for women. So like I got married at 22 and immediately like started having kids. So that's why I didn't end up in a career at first.
Yeah. That makes sense.
You know that moment when you realize that you can't keep living the way that you've been living? You've probably heard several of my guests talk about that already. If that resonates with you and you're feeling like you're in that moment, you're in luck. I've created a 30-day program that's going to help you become unstuck, reconnect with your joy, reconnect with yourself, and reconnect with your values. We're going to work together to figure out your next step, your vision, and your path forward. This is an invitation for you to live the life of your dreams that truly lights you up. Visit 101waysout.com to get started.
I really appreciate you sharing that. And it's so interesting to me. I was just listening to a podcast a week or so ago where the woman described a very similar situation that she was in. You may be familiar with her work because I think she talks a lot about it and publishes quite a bit about it. She has her own book about her experience.
Is it Tia Levings?
Yep, there you go. So it took me that long to find out that it is the person you just said. Yes.
A
Tia
Well-Trained
Levings.
Wife. That book?
Yes.
Wow. That book. Yes.
Did you read it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've actually, podcasts have been really helpful for me sorting through like that part of my life. So
Yeah.
there's a really great podcast called A Little Bit Culty.
Ooh.
And the reason it's so fascinating is because they interview people not just from religious high control groups, but from political groups. The hosts were in a personal development cult. So,
Ooh. Oh, wow.
yeah, pretty wild. So I think that's where I heard of Tia for the first time. And thankfully, I don't want anybody to read that book and think that that was my situation, because Tia's situation was really intense. So I'd say that some of the threads are the same, but I actually ended up with a really great husband, and she did
Oh, good.
not end up with a really great husband. So, we have come out of that time of our lives together, and that certainly doesn't always happen, but it's something I'm really thankful for. Like we managed to exit that together. But yeah, Tia's story is wild.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. But it's so interesting for someone that doesn't I don't have a religious background, period. So, but I understand the desire to be part of something, to belong to something. And I think,
Yeah.
especially as you're kind of navigating life, and like you said, you're away at college and you want to still participate in your faith. And, it's such a ripe breeding ground for being able to kind of pull somebody into something, I think, because it's all the things are there, right? You're alone. You want to belong, you want to make friends, you want to continue practicing your faith. Of course,
Yep.
you want to meet people. Of course, you want to date people. It's all of those things. And this environment is giving it to you. And as you're slowly kind of getting into it, you're not aware of all the things that it's taking from you at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. Yeah, you don't realize everything that's being stripped from you. And the wild thing is how much it changes your own thinking. So when I think about who I was in high school and then who I became at the end of college, there's so much that's unrecognizable to me, and I absolutely believed those things at the time. It's just so wild. So I feel like for me, a lot of my journey of coming home to myself is actually literally coming back to who I was and the things I valued before that period of time. Because that was a 10-year period of time for me. So yeah.
Wow, it's
Yeah.
it is a very long time.
It's a really long time. Yeah.
So from college through what age would you say? How did you finally make the decision to leave the church, I guess? And that must have been such a difficult thing. Getting out of any relationship that's not good for you, or any community that's not good for you, is so hard. But I think it would be even more difficult maybe if it was your faith. I don't know.
Your whole community. Yeah.
Yeah, it's everyone. That's everything.
Right. I think thankfully for us, this made it a little bit easier because we didn't have one moment where we woke up and we're like, what are we doing? We actually sort of slowly moved away from the original church, physically, we moved to a different place, and we ended up in another church that was sort of still had a lot of high control markers, but not to the same extent. And then from there, we ended up moving to a normal church. We just sort of slowly, as we got to know ourselves better as adults and things like that, we just made these shifts, and they were, because it wasn't truly a cult, right?
Yeah.
You could leave. So it's high control, but you can leave some of these, not always. But for us, we were able to just make these almost adjacent moves that were acceptable, because it was still oh, they're not rejecting their faith. They're going to a different church.
Let me just ask you a clarifying question, because I don't even know what that must be like to you. Because how did you make the decision to leave the most high control environment and go to a different church? How did you come to that decision? And how does that even work?
Well, I think the fact that we were going to this church only because we had moved there for college, it was in our college town. So because of that, it wasn't that abnormal to continue on with your life in a different state. And that's what we did. We had friends who had moved to a different state, and then they were like, come, you should check it out. And that's how we had just gotten married. We'd been married 6 months. And that's when we moved. So I do think it was really helpful that we made that transition at that time. Again, like there were really some problematic things of the church that we ended up going to in the new place, but it was not nearly as controlling in a lot of ways. And so, yeah.
How was that experience for you? Because you grew up with a mom who was a preschool art teacher, and then you were very interested in different cultural aspects. You went to college, you were learning all these different things. Was there cognitive dissonance involved with, like, you're going to college for these things? Like, I guess at some point in thinking, like, I will have a career, and then you get involved with this church that's like, actually, no, you're going to be a stay-at-home mom.
Mm-hmm.
Was there like a difficulty, like identity-wise, with that, or did that take time to come out?
It's a really good question. And I think if I can demonstrate how bought in I was by the time that I was done with school, I got a free ride to get my master's degree to teach English as a second language. And I quit it because the church told me, well, you're a wife now and you should be focusing on your husband and ministry. And I quit my free master's degree because I was so bought in.
Yeah.
So there wasn't cognitive dissonance at the time. I mean, I'm sure like somewhere deep inside. Now I'm just like, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? And that just shows you like how much they've broken down the person.
Yeah, absolutely. Where my head goes is that the things that we tell ourselves that we're exposed to enough that become our beliefs, and our beliefs become our lives. And so you've got to be very careful about what you put into your head and what you allow into your head, because that affects everything, right?
Totally. And I mean, I think really for me, it was helpful that I had this fully formed self before I got sucked into that. And I think that helped me a lot because when I was ready, I had something to refer to of who I was, the real identity that got like buried under that. So a lot of people who grow up in it feel like they're having to completely create their identity if they decide to leave, because they didn't have that separate identity. Yeah.
So as you were like, you moved from one church to the next and you went to the one that was like more, I don't know, I guess liberal is the word I'm going to say, but maybe that's not the right word. Less controlling.
No, I think so. Yeah. And like the last one was a healthy church.
Yeah.
Like the last church before we launched. So like the church I grew up in was great. The church that I finally ended up in was great.
Yeah. So how long did it take you deprogram and start to come home to yourself and figure out like, I actually have other interests. I have other things I want to do. Like, what was that process like?
I would say that once we entered that last church that we were there 8 years before we launched. So I had this nice long time where I was encouraged to be myself. There were women in that church who had careers, had a life, apart from their kids. I mean, I have nothing against women choosing to stay home with their kids. It just needs to be a choice. It needs to be not this is your option, your one option, So I would say actually the thing for us that began to change things and how we even ended up where we ended up in that church, we have a multiracial family. And so as I began to read books and get exposed to different ideas for parenting my children and different philosophies of parenting and just history that I hadn't necessarily had a lot of exposure to, those things I think started to really break down some of the programming. That coupled with depression as a mom, it was crazy. Like, if you can imagine, I have, like, my kids are like 5.5 years from top to bottom.
Wow.
So like, it was really, and then several of them have developmental delays, like significant ones. One of my kids has Down syndrome. So I was sort of like drowning as a mom. And at that point, I think I started really examining, like, what can I do to come back to myself and like, what can I do to bring myself like joy, invest in my own interests. And once I began exploring that again, I think that that's really what led me out. And, some of my interests were like travel and planning travel. And that just hadn't really been on the table for many years. So travel is a big part of my like coming back to life story. And also realizing that I wanted my kids to have a mom who was like alive and like glad to be alive and glad, like engaged with the world, and that I could bring my kids along into the things I enjoyed rather than feeling like I had to be this person that like loved baking and like house cleaning and like, I don't know, it's not me. And like, I have friends that I'm just in awe of. Like they do the homemaking thing really well. And that was never me. And I was trying to be that. So I was always just feeling like I was failing, like at doing what I was supposed to do,
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really a departure from like, oh, you're not failing. Like you're just literally trying to be somebody that you're not. So how can you be the person you actually are? And then bring your children into that.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to ask, because I always wonder this when I think back about in history to like the 1800s and early 1900s, when we had women that were really fighting for the right to vote. They were struggling. They were trying to get that emancipation. And there were men along the way, a lot of them husbands, that supported their wives and said, yes, women should have the right to vote. And there were many, many, many men. I don't know if it was more men, but there were plenty of men that were like, nope, women should not have the right to vote. So it was a fight that lasted a very, very long time. When I think about high control church culture that you're part of, like obviously it's a patriarchal system. There are men trying to control women and women that are trying to be perfect in this box like you're talking about. And you and your husband left together. But in this context of this religion, like the men are the head of the household. They have the control. You're supposed to defer to them and obey them and all this stuff. Was it difficult? Like, what was that like for your husband to break out of? Was it a difficult thing to say, actually, like, this is not the life we're going to live? I'm not going to defer to you for everything? Or was that not really such a challenge?
I think what's really interesting is there are a lot of couples in churches like this, not the most high control ones. Like Tia's example is a really great example of like some of the most high control situations. But there's a lot of people who are in churches like we were that had some of those things going on, but not so extreme. And I think there's a lot more equality in marriage in those churches, even though people like talk and think like the man is the head of the household. Like functionally, I think that doesn't really work well in a marriage in many ways, and I think if there's a couple and they really like deeply love and respect each other, the man is not often in that situation coming and like making a hard stance, like this is what we're going to do. Like there's a conversation and you know what I mean? Like we just didn't find ourselves functionally having our marriage look like that. But even if we're like, yeah, sure, that's what we think or whatever, I think we tried to play those roles for the first few years of marriage, and neither of us were very good at it. I'm the visionary in the relationship. And so that was really like, what do we do with this? There were so many things where we just like personality wise, we just did not fit in those roles. And so I think as we just came to appreciate each other's strengths and like honor each other's strengths and just go through the process of like getting to know each other as a married couple, we weren't really functioning in that way.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
100%. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So as you kind of were like learning, growing, supporting each other, neither one of you were like, yeah, these roles are natural for us. It's more like we have our strengths, we honor our strengths, we support each other, and it's more of a marriage of equals, not a marriage of hierarchy. So it probably made it more straightforward as you were navigating what the next steps looked like.
Yeah, I think so. I think once we never just said, oh, we don't agree with this. As we functioned as a couple, it just, we weren't really in that system.
Have you had those conversations now or more recently about your relationship? and the hierarchical structure, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that we sort of laugh about it. We just sort of joke about how we're like really bad. The term is complementarianism. So like either there's complementary marriages where he's the head and she's submitting or whatever, and then there's egalitarian, which would be the equal. So these are church terms. But yeah, like we're the very worst complementarians. Like we're not trying to be, anymore, but like yeah, it's just we just sort of laugh about it. I think we've had to just have lots of conversations about what damage that did to like us personally and us as a couple and us as parents, and just sort of really like sort through a lot of that and go like, no, like that's not how we want to be.
Yeah. It's so interesting. I think like couplehood is not easy and marriage isn't easy, and it all takes work. It all takes communication. And I think especially, gosh, navigating, like, I guess my only example is I grew up in a Republican household. So did my husband. Neither one of us are now. And we moved around quite a bit. We lived in New York City. We were exposed to other people and other ideas. And so fortunately, like for us, we were able to kind of like learn and grow and evolve together. Right. And so we've had a lot of conversations too about like, oh, I can't believe we used to think this and now we think this and we see things differently. Right. Yeah. Wait. So it must be like so interesting too for you, like going through all of that and you're going through it together. And you're like, oh, and now that we're at this point in our lives, we feel very differently than we did 5 years ago, 10 years ago, but you're constantly evolving. And with the open lines of communication, it makes it easier. It makes it possible.
Yeah, exactly. I think what you're describing is very much what we've experienced. Just, like at different points, maybe one of us was at a different place doing reading about things or getting exposed to ideas, and so maybe somebody came to a conclusion like sooner than the other person or whatever. But yeah, like just continually along that same trajectory together of growth and development. Yeah. And I mean, we feel really fortunate that we've ended up in the same place because yeah, it's so not a guarantee in marriage.
Absolutely.
Of any sort.
Yes. Yeah. I'm guessing like you deal with clients all the time. I'm sure you're dealing with clients that are trying to figure out the spousal part of things too. Okay, let me skip forward because I'm so fascinated. I'm really fascinated by your story. I had no idea about that part of your background. Like you said,
yeah,
I don't know how much
sorry.
we're gonna get, but
it's really
no, it's fascinating and it makes so much sense. And I think, like, I don't want to say this because, I don't want to bring it into the world, but it is where we are in the United States right now. I think there's just more and more of that pressure and the form of like the church, not the good kind, like having a huge amount of influence in the country and taking over in a lot of ways, So your story, I think, is really important. And I think it's also partially like probably what led you to your journey. So let me skip to Andie didn't escape corporate America. Andie escaped crazy church control America. And that's freaking amazing. So kudos to you.
It's a thing.
It's a thing. Like we talked about Tia earlier, what she said in the podcast I listened to, and I haven't read her book. Maybe I will. What she said is that so much of what was discussed in her church is the way that several of the leaders of our country are feeling and expect our country to go in that direction. Right.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I find that scary.
The people, they're in charge right now. Like those people that were like in charge of me, like functionally, like those ideas, that's really upsetting. It's really, really upsetting. I think
it's very upsetting
having had that background and then just being like, I could talk all day about that.
Let's have like a small portion of that conversation, and then we'll pivot to like kind of where you are now, what you're doing, and because I definitely want to cover that. But let me share, because this is something that just came up. It's coming up a lot lately, but it came up a lot for me like the last 24 hours because my son always asks these very insightful questions and never lets me get off easy. We were talking about Kamala, because kids, right? You have 5 of them, so But we're talking about Kamala Harris. So I was very active in like trying to. I'm not that political. I guess I am now. I'm very political now, but like I used to not be. But I was like going door to door. I was like knocking on doors. I was like, come on and vote. It used to be super into running and it kind of comes and goes for me. But like, I really haven't. It's been almost a year, November 8th, right around the corner. It's literally been almost a year since I was running regularly. And the last morning that I went for my long run, it was the morning of the election. And I remember I was like running and I was excited because I was like, there's a chance. And it was, albeit like I didn't have a lot of faith, but I was like, there's a chance that Trump won't win. There was a song that will.i.am put out that was like, we're about to have a woman president. And I was just like running. I ran so far. I was so excited. I was like, I'm going to just let this good vibe, this good energy be in my life. And then we got the news. We were at like a watch party for one of our Congress people. And we got the news that it was obvious Trump was going to win. And it was like, I went into this depression after that, and it's like, not gotten a lot better. Like I'm better because I'm working on stuff I love, but obviously things that are happening here are not great. And so like you mentioned, the people that are running our country now are, you're familiar with that mindset and that kind of control mindset. Did the direction of our country have anything to do with your decision to leave the United States or no?
Yeah, here's the way I talk about it. So I think everyone who is thinking of leaving has their like fears in one hand and their hopes in the other hand. And for me, at the time, the 20-year dream to live abroad, like that was the stronger hope, or the stronger of the two drivers between fear and hope. Yeah, I think it was like I wanted adventure. I wanted to follow through on this dream. I wanted to give it a try. I wanted to show my kids the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But in the other hand, I have a multiracial family. I have neurodivergent kids. I have disabled kids. And, all of this is in the news right now, like crazy stuff being said about different populations who reside in my family. I mean, queer community stuff, like just the kind of things that are going on right now definitely directly impacts my family. And those were smaller fears at that time. But I mean, police violence against Black bodies was a really big concern. So those things were there. They were both there, both the hope and the fear. And so, yeah, like I think while at that time, the hopes and the dreams were more prevalent, I think the reason that we don't want to return is the fears.
Yeah. Well, that makes a ton of sense. 2019 to now is, a short 6 years, but a very long 6 years. And especially in the last year, it's so different. It's so different now than it was in 2019. So it totally makes sense why you're like, the hopes outweigh the fears, and maybe vice versa now, if you were still here. So what made you finally take the leap? Like what drove you to, we're leaving the United States? Because you said your husband had a career. You guys were like doing the American thing where you're kind of climbing the ladder, and, you said spending in relation to what you're making, which is very American.
Yeah.
Yes. So
yes.
What made you decide to leave that lifestyle behind?
So, I mean, I think it did begin when we started to like look at the brevity of life. And we, at that time, like I had a couple of friends with cancer, had a friend who like lost their child really tragically. And so those really sort of, what are we doing with our life? Are we doing what we want with our life? Like thinking, none of this is guaranteed. Our health isn't guaranteed. Nothing is guaranteed. And so once we began asking those questions, that's when we downsized so that we could have more money for travel. And that's when we began traveling internationally. And then over the course of traveling internationally, I mean, every time I left America, I felt like I was coming up for air. So, which means, when I was in America, I felt underwater. And so I think that coupled with seeing our kids do really well traveling and in international situations, seeing that I could envision it. I could envision them doing well. And the other big piece is once my kids with big delays learned to read in school, I was like, I could teach them, like, because schooling was a big question. And so I knew that like we would need a solution for schooling, especially if we were going to be traveling and like not in one place. And so I think once they began to be able to read, I was like, okay, I didn't really like necessarily want to homeschool, but I just knew like I could support them in their education if they could read. Like I didn't know how to teach them to read,
Yeah, that makes sense.
So like they had like really amazing special education in Minnesota. And Yeah.
That's great.
So those were sort of the big hurdles for us. And I became a virtual assistant. So I had remote income.
Oh, did you do that before you left the US? The VA work? Oh, cool.
Yeah, because I wanted something that I could take with me and like just have an extra income for us.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Those were the things that sort of like clicked into place where we were like, okay, I think we can do this. Yeah, nothing worked out job-wise for my husband in the way that we expected. Like we actually thought we were going to transfer with his company because they were international. And then that all fell apart after we didn't have a house anymore. So
no.
it was totally crazy. Yeah, we really had a bumpy road of it.
Wow. Do you mind sharing just a tiny bit more about what happened with his job? Like you guys were,
so we were just sort of like in communication with his company, and it really looked like, oh yeah, probably like this transfer to Ireland might be able to happen.
Yes,
and like we were talking about that over the course of fall 2018 through spring 2019. And so there was this like conversion of crazy events. Like we were renting at that point because we had downsized, and the people we were renting from sold the house out from under us. That was like May 2019. And so we were like, oh, well, this like transfer is going to happen sometime during the summer. So like, we'll just Airbnb hop.
Yeah.
And so we're like Airbnb hopping with our family of 7. He's still riding his motorbike to work. And then like maybe about July, we realized like, this is not happening. So then we had to sort of figure out like, okay, do we want to sign another lease? Like we thought we were launching abroad. And so then we began to really like, what are our options? What are we doing? And that's when we began to think outside the box, because for us, the goal was moving abroad. It wasn't like specifically moving to Ireland with his company. Like our goal and our dream was to live abroad. So then we began really like exploring, well, what can we do and what are our options? And that's when we found that house sit.
Oh, yeah.
The 4-month house sit. And we ended up living in Nova Scotia for the winter of 2019. So
okay, I can understand why people would want to leave Nova Scotia to go somewhere warmer, most likely.
For the winter.
For the winter, yeah.
So we ended up living in this tiny town on this tiny island in Nova Scotia and taking care of a Shar Pei. That's what we did for the winter. We were coming from Minnesota, though. So you have to remember, like, Minnesota is what we were used to. So we were like, no big deal. You know, at least we can go like look at the ocean. It was very like, it was a sweet transition.
That's wonderful.
Because yeah, like Nova Scotia is cool because they have Gaelic influence, like at least that island particularly did. And yeah, it was a really neat experience.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh. It's so weird. Like life is so weird too because I'm sorry, this is just like a weird coincidence, right? You just said Shar Pei, like you guys were there taking care of a Shar Pei. And I never my kid made this face this morning and it like all furrowed up. I said, oh my God, you look like a Shar Pei puppy. He's like, what's a Shar Pei puppy? And I said, I'll have to find a picture of it. So now you said that, I'm like, oh my God, that's so cool. It's so weird how like life has these random coincidences. Okay, so Nova Scotia, not that far from the United States. Now you're living in Europe. So how did you make that jump over to Europe? And how did you guys like figure out your life? Did you do a lot of planning to kind of get your finances in order? And you started your oh no, big sign.
I feel like for us, the reason that I feel like I can teach move abroad stuff is because literally I feel like we just made every mistake and like everything came crashing down multiple times, right? So like the Ireland transfer didn't work. And then we were planning on moving from Nova Scotia once that house sit finished straight to the Republic of Georgia, to Tbilisi. And we had tickets to go on March 19th, 2020, which is when Georgia's airspace shut down. So like we ended up living in campers in my parents' yard in rural Florida. So that,
oh my gosh.
Yeah. So like, that's the second time everything came crashing down. And like Andrew, my husband, was on a sabbatical while we were in Nova Scotia. And just I was
cool.
working. And then I lost all my contracts except one. So like we're living in campers. We have like $500 a month. It's COVID. We have no home. We have no car. I mean, thankfully, like my parents are amazing and like they were such safety nets for us. I always tell people like there may come a point in this move abroad adventure where like everything comes crashing down and you need to use your safety nets. And so like that's okay. Like it's okay. That's why we have safety nets and we're just really thankful for them.
Absolutely.
After that, like 2020 was really hard, but then we built back up our work and we ended up applying to Georgia, began what a lot of countries have done now, which is like working remotely, like digital nomad type visas. And so their borders weren't open to everybody, but they started a program for remote workers. And so we applied. And then by fall 2020, we ended up in Tbilisi.
Yeah, very cool.
Working remotely. Yeah.
Why Tbilisi? Why Georgia?
It was sort of a pipe dream of mine. In 2018, I took a trip with my best friend and we went to Georgia. We also went to Turkey and I fell in love with Georgia. And
oh, cool.
Yeah, I loved it there. It was a really unique place to be. Nat Geo named it the most bohemian city in the world or the most bohemian capital city in the world. Like it's a really fascinating place. Yeah. And so after visiting there, I sort of had this pipe dream to move there. And it was very much a pipe dream because I was like, how would this work? And whatever. And then like 2 years later, there I was like walking across the Turkish border with my family, with all of our earthly belongings into Georgia. So yeah.
That's amazing. I love that your pipe dream became real.
Yes.
How did you guys figure out where you wanted to settle down?
We thought we were going to be in Georgia longer and we had like a wonderful community there. Like it was a really good experience living there. The time difference, because both my husband and I work with mostly American businesses, the time difference was rough. But then also the other thing that was really rough was my mom got diagnosed with Alzheimer's while we were in Georgia. And so trying to get home from Georgia to the States was much harder than trying to get home from Portugal. Like Portugal, you can directly fly into the States. And so, yeah, I think around that time, like for those reasons, we just felt like we need to be closer. We need to be in Western Europe. And so that's when we went through the residency application to come here to Portugal in 2022.
That makes sense. Had you guys visited Portugal before?
Yeah, actually, right. It was our first stop after we became accidentally nomadic when our landlord sold our house. Our first stop was Portugal, like never imagining that we would live here. We were just like on holiday. So yeah, we had been a couple of times.
Okay, very cool. It's interesting about your mom. I'm sorry to hear the Alzheimer's thing. That's a terrible disease. I've had a couple of relatives that have unfortunately had that. You mentioned before we started recording that part of like, because obviously what you do now is you help people relocate and you kind of give them like the tips and the workshops and the coaching. One of the things that you mentioned that I thought was really interesting because I hear a lot from folks that they would love to leave the United States, but they can't because of their aging parents. And you said, well, I do talk a lot about the emotional side of things, like the guilt and the shame that comes from that. I mean, clearly, like you mentioned with your mom, clearly you feel the need to be somewhere closer so that you can, be supportive as well. So what is that like when you talk to folks about their limiting beliefs in terms of whether they can actually live abroad?
I think it's such a hard and nuanced question because there's so many factors of like in families and family expectations and things like that. I know for myself, I really, because of my responsibilities to my kids, I really had to go like, I have to be okay here. Like, I have to be okay. I need to like choose not being underwater, so that I can mother these people. And I mean, for my own self, like, even if it's just one person, like,
absolutely,
it's like, this is your life. And I think I really want to encourage people like to think about the end of your life and like, are you living for yourself? Like, are you making choices, not a hyper independent kind of mentality, but just like, are you saying no to things that light you up because you feel like you have to do XYZ? And like, ideally, it wouldn't be an all or nothing choice. And for us, it's not been an all or nothing choice. Like, we've brought my mom here and she stayed here for a month so that my dad could have a caregiving break. I think that there's these mentalities that like, if I leave, I'm abandoning everyone. And honestly, in my experience, I have more emotional capacity living here, and I'm able to show up even for my long distance relationships, like more fully. Now, I'm not able to be face to face as often. Like, that's a really hard trade off. But I think I am able to be present to my life. I'm able to be present to my role as a mom a lot better here. And then I'm just trying to demonstrate love to my extended family. I mean, I keep telling them, like, come, and a lot of times the parents won't come. But I think a lot of people assume that they cannot bring their elderly parents with them. And that's not true. There are many opportunities around the world where, as long as you have enough financially to provide for that person, they can come as a dependent on you, even as your parent. And so it doesn't, there's not this like black and white, it has to be this or it has to be this. There's a lot of gray and a lot of different options if that's a really important value to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. That's so helpful. And I hope that people hearing this that are on the fence are feeling like, oh, I can't, take heart in that and hopefully reach out and learn more about what actually is possible. I know we're getting close to time. I want to ask you two more, maybe it'll be like a rapid fire round of questions. How has your life changed now that you're settled in Portugal versus when you were in the United States?
I find life to be a lot more humane here. Just like the way that people deal with each other, the stress levels, the ability to take a break, to sit and drink your coffee all the way, or sit and have your meal all the way. Just things that like are very foreign to us as Americans because we're always very aware of the clock. And I think life feels a lot less stressful and a lot more like human. I'm just able to like be a human more instead of feeling like I have to produce all the time. And that's a really nice change. Yeah. Big one.
That makes a ton of sense. How about your guys' income? How has your income changed since living in the US to now?
We make less. This year, it's been hard, to be honest, because we pay for everything in euro and the US dollar has tanked since January. So like all of our expenses are rising because we get paid in US dollar.
That makes sense.
That said, we have a very big family. And so for most people, I mean, even for a very big family, I think things in different places in the world do feel like more accessible. The necessities, like fresh food is a lot more accessibly priced. Medical care is a lot more accessibly priced. So it's sort of balanced out. Even though we make less, we're able to have access to the things that still make life feel stable and good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting. Like the US dollar, I've talked to several folks that have moved abroad and even recently someone that's living in Thailand too. And they're like, yeah, the US dollar, you just don't realize like how much that fluctuation will affect you. You don't really think about it until you're in it. And so someone I spoke with that's living in Europe, I think she was in the Netherlands. She said that her biggest regret is she wishes that they had transferred more into the local currency sooner because they wouldn't have to worry about that variation. Yeah.
Yeah. I do think that that's a really smart tip is if you have a good savings, pay attention to those rates. And yeah, that's a really good tip. Really good tip.
That's a good tip. Yeah. If only we could go back to the beginning of January.
I know. Oh my goodness.
This has been great. And I so sincerely appreciate this conversation. Like I have so many notes now that I was like trying to write down as you were talking. I was like, this is good. I got to go back to this.
Yeah.
What advice would you give for somebody that's trying to figure out what to do with their lives?
you really only need to know the next couple steps. You do not need to know your 10-year life plan. You do not need to know your final destination. We certainly did not know our final destination. This might not even be our final destination. I mean, it's foreseeable. For the foreseeable future, we will be here. But I think people feel like they have to burn down everything in America and like go relocate everything. And that's really not true. You absolutely can just like try a month abroad, see how you like it. There's a lot more experimentation that can happen than people think. And so they don't have to have everything figured out right now. They just need to keep taking the steps in the direction.
I love that. That's super helpful. All right, everybody. Hi. You might notice that we're dressed a little differently. We might look a little different, hair, etc., jewelry. Well, this is a different day. We've had to wait a little bit of time so we can get back together and complete our interview and our conversation with Andie. So Andie has been so gracious and wonderful and willing to give me more of her valuable time so that we can kind of talk a little bit more about her and where she's going. All right, so we'll jump back in. Andie, as you've made this transition to Portugal, as you started your business, everything else, what is your support system looking like at this moment in your life?
That's a good question. We have like a pretty good community where we're living, but it's not the community that I would have had before because almost all our friends are retirees. So I have like a lot of friends who are in their 60s and 70s, which I love in a lot of ways because they're the kind of people that we want to be like, you know?
Yeah.
So they're the kind of adventurous people who are very active. I mean, a couple of them have a tandem bike that they've ridden all around the world. And then there's ones who like, those are the ones who went skydiving for their 50th anniversary. So like...
Oh my God.
That's
amazing.
Yeah, they're incredible. Yeah. So I feel like our support system has been just getting to know the people who are here. And otherwise, we don't have like a huge community, which is hard.
Yeah. Your support system is inspiring, but it's limited because it's like all people that you're just, you're meeting and it's not your family, right? I guess that would probably be a big part, a big change.
Yeah. So interesting how deep that you can go with people. I think a lot of us who have been nomadic or lived internationally, like you have sort of an understanding with people immediately. There are even international people who are in the region here that I don't see on a daily basis. But then if I have questions about the immigration process, I'm like messaging them or
oh, nice.
So it's like you sort of know, even if it's not your everyday friends, you sort of have this network of people who also get it because they're going through the immigration process or they were also homeless during COVID. It's just really, it's a very specific experience. And so, like you sort of build a new network and it isn't necessarily like some of those people you become really, really close with. And some of them, you just sort of, they're your safety net a little bit for questions and stuff like that. I think the hardest thing about this life is that there is a lot of transition. So we've made close friends and then they've returned back to the States or they've moved on to another place. So I think that that's one of the things that's like really difficult about this life.
Yeah, I can see that. That makes so much sense. I feel like that's tough, like in kind of traditional American life. If you have a friend that you love and they move away, or if you move because you're going for a different job, but it feels like it'd even be more of a common experience moving abroad, especially with so many people that are kind of figuring out where they might want to stay long term. They're just kind of exploring different locations. Yeah. It feels like that would happen quite a bit.
Yeah.
I wouldn't think about that. Yeah.
I think it does happen in the States more than there are the people. I know when we lived in certain places, there were the people who'd been there forever and their family was all there and everything. And then there were the people who had like moved there, and you just run up against like different mentalities. But then in this kind of situation, the other immigrants are often the kind of people who do move, they're the people who move from place to place, even in the States, so they tend to keep moving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That totally makes sense. Oh my gosh. As you guys were deciding to leave, I don't remember if we talked about this before, so I'm just going to ask you again. Was it a scary choice to leave the country?
I think in every family, it sort of depends on the different personalities. So for me, I was really ready. And I think for my husband, who is much more practical than me and like, in the best kind of way, can sort of like look into the future and go, oh, well, how are we going to deal with that? And how are we going to deal with that? And I'm just like, we'll figure it out, and that's uncomfortable for him. So for me, it felt like freedom and excitement. And I think for him, like he wanted it and he also was weighing the practicalities, and that felt frightening.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you weren't scared, but he was feeling a little bit scared.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Do you have an ultimate vision for what you want your life to look like?
That's a really good question. I think it sort of changes a little bit. Since we've been here in Portugal, I could actually envision buying property and like having a place with tiny homes. And, so that's sort of my current pipe dream, is like having a tiny home and having some land, even just land to keep natural, just like, I feel like the world needs more spaces like that. So yeah, sometimes I dream of that. Yeah, but I think it's a little bit in flux and muddy these days, to be honest. But I think I'm most excited about just working on my business and trying to launch some of my kids. So
Totally. I mean, that makes sense. And I think it's okay. Like, even though you've kind of settled down a little bit, you're still like in a transition. And I think, especially as a mom to a large group of kids, like there's so much going on and changing all the time.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that it's kind of like in flux. I do love what you just said about the natural land and the tiny home. And that to me does sound like such a cool, beautiful, attainable goal, and something to think, like, be really optimistic about.
Yeah.
Last time we talked, you had not long ago put out your flowchart. How is it going? Are you like considering doing more of that? Are you like, how is that like leaning into the business going?
Yeah, I just talked with somebody who so there's the flowchart and then there's the workshop. Somebody did the workshop and gave me really good feedback. And so I was like, hey, can we talk more about this? And I think maybe a community is in the works. So
Cool.
So that would be cool. I think, this trying to launch abroad experience can be very isolating because, people have big emotions about it themselves, but then also the people that you tell have big emotions about it, right? Like maybe your family doesn't want you to go, or maybe your friends are like, I don't want to encourage this because I'm not going, so true. Yeah, it can be really tricky. And so she had expressed to me, this is a really lonely journey. So it feels really like normalizing to listen to the workshop and think through things and hear what other people who attended the workshop were saying. Like, oh, I'm not alone in this. A lot of people are having these big questions and feelings. So it seems like a community is probably a natural next step.
I love that. I think that would be so helpful. You're right. Like, it's also how do you, I don't know if your community, was your community for the people that would be considering leaving, or would it be like the support for the family members as well?
That's a good question. Probably for the people who were thinking about leaving. Cause I do feel like, because that's in my experience, I can speak to those emotions. I don't really know like what to tell the people who are getting lost. I don't, it's hard. I will just say, like, I think people want it to be all happy, and it's not. Like, there are real griefs in leaving. There are very big, complicating things that hurt, it's just part of it. So yeah, I feel like I can speak to the goers.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, as somebody that is very interested in settling abroad or living abroad for a period of time and just having that experience in my life, 100% would love a community like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I also am reflecting on what you're saying about the family members and friends that really don't want you to go. And I know a while back I was talking to my dad about considering leaving the United States. This is my own personal thing. Like, I worry about the gun violence and at school. So that's a really big thing for me. And he's like, well, you don't have to leave America for that. You could just like find it. And surely there's a state that's safer. So that's his mentality, is like, don't leave the United States, just find a safe state. Of course, he doesn't want us to go. Right.
Right.
And then I was telling my cousin, I was like, oh, I think it'd be really fun for us to live in like Thailand for a little while because it's a really cool Buddhist culture and it's so beautiful and there's so much interesting nature. And he's like, oh, I don't want you to go. I mean, just live near me. And I'm so like, oh, it's really sweet. And it's so hard because you care about these people and you don't want to like hurt them. But at the same time, you want to live the life that you want to live. And so I think a support group would be super helpful.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Or a community. I'm saying support group, but community.
Hopefully it would feel a little bit like a support group, to be honest. Yeah. When I was talking to the woman who was brainstorming with me, she was saying it can be like a really hard, polarizing topic because people put up their walls. Like even if she's like expressing the types of concerns that were just expressing about like safety for your kid, people get all up in their emotions about it, right?
Yeah.
Because maybe it feels like an indictment. Like, well, I care about my kid's safety, or it gets real complicated really quickly.
Yes.
And so I think having to not have to wade through that and actually be able to talk about the subject would be a really helpful part of a community like that.
Absolutely. I love that. Okay, good. Well, before this podcast gets published, I bet you'll already have that set up and then we'll be checking back in again to say, how is it going? If you had to choose between happiness or success, which would you pick? And has that changed for you at all over time?
Yeah, that's a great question. It brings into the question, like, how do you define success, really? Yeah, I think for me, I would choose probably happiness. I think I can say that, like, really honestly, actually, because I think about this a lot with as many kids as we have, and it's sort of a stressful reality sometimes. And like,
oh my gosh, I have one and I'm like stressed out. So yeah.
Yeah. So there's these elements of our lives that are really intense, but we're really happily married. And I think often like that is everything, really.
Yeah.
Like our lives are chaotic and whatever. And, trying to provide for 5 kids is really a lot. And I think, theoretically success would fix that, right? Like financially or whatever. And there's something to be said for financial stability for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I just think like I'm so lucky to have a partner that we really just respect and enjoy each other. That's just, it feels like everything,
Yeah.
to not have that be a stressor in life.
Yeah.
Because money can't fix that.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely not. And I do, Andie, I had a conversation with a woman just earlier this morning, and she said similar things that, and I can tell you, I've talked to many people that are divorced and many people that are not in that situation, right? But both you and her this morning talking about your relationships with your husbands and how happy you are together, how supportive you are of one another, and just having that bond and that like you actually enjoy each other as people is so amazing and wonderful to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think it's truly special and worth more, like you said, more than money and more than everything. Because like, I think we think about like, oh, this Disney story fairy tale where like you meet the prince and then all your problems are solved and like you get whisked away to the castle and then your story ends. Like all the Disney stories end when you get married. Like that's such BS, right? Like that's not the thing. The thing is the life that you build together afterwards. And it's not about a castle and money and all this stuff. It's about like the ups and downs of life and navigating it together.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. I think that's like in my life, that's a real gift. And I will say, when people do get divorced, it's because they want to be happier too. So, it's the same value and it's like taking care of yourself usually, and so, yeah.
Absolutely. So many people that I talk to that don't have that relationship, like their stories start to flourish when they get divorced. It's like that divorce, like they were held back and so unhappy. And, not even like necessarily like they were with a really bad person, but just so much of it was like they weren't right together. And then they separated from that person. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, I can actually become even more of the person that I wanted to be. And I can focus on this new business. I can move to this new location. I can thrive in a way I didn't realize was possible before.
Yes.
And so like that to me is absolutely beautiful and rewarding that they're able to do that. But I think being in a situation that you're in where you have a solid partner and you're able to grow from there is wonderful too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I'm pro both.
Yeah.
I'm pro people being happy and not jerks. Like, that's all that really matters. Just be
Yeah.
nice. Just be nice to
Totally.
each other and just be happy. What's the most liberating decision that you've been able to make since you left your situation that you were in the United States? You had left the high control religion that you were in. You left that all behind and you moved to Portugal.
I think just learning to listen to myself and believe in myself is a big part of it. The more you do something that you never imagined that you could do, and then you see
Yeah.
that you can do it, and you're like, oh, wow, I could do a lot of things, So that feels really encouraging to just be able to trust in my own ability to adapt to life and do cool things. I used to think that I could never have a career. I can't remember if I talked about this before, but I really thought, like, I'm not built for this. I'm not built for having a career. I can't imagine having a career. Like, because I just felt like I had this very narrow vision of, like, that means I go to an office and I sit on a computer and and I would suck at that real bad. But if I can do almost the same thing, having become a virtual assistant and then spending lots of time on my computer, but doing it in my home while I can still take care of my kids, that really, I think it changed my whole expectation for what I was capable of, what options are out there for me, what options are out there for our family. And then, of course, like, when you move your family of 7, like, through multiple countries and things fall apart and you rebuild it, you're just like, I can do this. And I think that gives me confidence to do whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. As I sit here and think about myself with my child and the logistics of trying to go somewhere else, and then I think about you with your family and moving all around and doing all those things, like, I have like this, you're on a pedestal in my mind because that is so incredibly brave and resilient and strong and amazing that you're able to do that. It just seems like so many different hurdles that you've overcome.
Yeah.
And I can absolutely understand what you're saying in terms of, like, this path that you're on and how much it's over time, you've been able to develop the confidence that you can do difficult things because you've seen yourself do them kind of increasingly along the way. And you're like, oh, look, I did that. And then I did that. And then I did that. And now I know I can do so much more as far as what's ahead of you. So that's really awesome to hear.
Yeah, you, like, surprise yourself for sure.
Yeah.
I do often tell people when they say, like, how do you do it all? I'm like, we have really bad dental health. Like,
Yeah.
oh, like things we just, like, balls drop. Okay. So our house is very messy, balls drop. But as far as, like, that, can I do something big? Yeah, I can do something big. Can I keep my house clean? No.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think the house not being clean is an okay thing to let go of.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it has.
Well,
been.
personally, I guess.
Yeah.
It's so funny. Have you found a dentist that you like in Portugal?
I have. Yes.
Yay.
Yeah. So
Good.
they keep us in check.
Good. Oh my gosh. I feel like I love a doctor that will give you reminders and text you and email you. And I feel like with my son's pediatrician, I'm like, they never send me a reminder. And so I'm like, okay, well, I know he's already had his birthday and it's been 3 months. I better make an appointment, I guess, because I
Right.
haven't heard from them.
Right. You're like, could you get this on a calendar for me?
Yes.
That would be great.
Yes, please. Yeah. The dentist is great about that. They're like, okay, your next 6-month appointment is here. Like, thank you. I don't want to have to think about it.
Yeah.
So as long as you have someone that's taking care of you, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, totally.
What lights you up in your life?
I think creativity lights me up. Writing lights me up, but not writing captions for Instagram. I hate writing captions for Instagram. Writing.
I wouldn't know it now that I'm not following your Instagram.
I think I'm meant to do some longer form writing, I guess, is
Ah,
all,
that's cool.
like, I don't do bite-sized things very well, but yeah, I don't know. I think my 2 mottos are find the beauty and dare to live. And so I think that those just are sort of infused. That's what lights me up. I like figuring out how to thrive in your circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
Even when your circumstances are hard, which is an interesting thing to say as somebody who's moved out of various circumstances. But, I think it's a really good life skill to be able to find the beauty around you in your life, no matter where you are. That's something that you take with you. And like if you're looking for something else in life to fix the fact that you can't see things as beautiful, like nothing's going to fix that. It's like an inside job.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah. So I just want to encourage people to do that. I want to encourage people to be thoughtful with their lives as far as daring to live. I feel like that doesn't mean traveling necessarily. It just means like, am I really like being present in my life? Am I being present and enjoying being alive? So yeah, that's what I try to remember for myself, and I like to share with other people.
Those are great mottos to live by.
Yeah.
Is there anything I didn't ask you about that I should have? Or that you want to share, or that you want to share?
I think I want to encourage people to go places off the beaten path after living in Tbilisi, Georgia, and really learning to appreciate the richness of that culture. I think people have sometimes a very narrow idea of where they want to go. And like the world is so vast and there are so many places to go. I want to encourage people to be like flexible with where they're going, like there's just so many cool places in the world. So I don't know. I just want to hype Tbilisi a little bit.
Nice.
Because it's a really neat place to go. I think everybody's really focused on, not everybody, but there's a big focus on Portugal right now. Portugal's a little inundated. So as somebody who's living abroad, I just want to say like think outside the box, even for anybody who might be considering traveling or moving abroad, like go experience the world.
That's great. Yeah, you definitely make me want to go to Tbilisi. It's like on my list now, and it wouldn't have been before.
Yeah, it's really a unique place. So I love it.
That's cool. If people want to find out more about you and follow along with your journey or reach out to you, what's the best way for them to do that?
I'm on Instagram and Threads as One Daring Adventure. And that's probably the best way to get in touch with me, to be honest.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Andie. I really appreciate your amazing insight and story.
Yeah. Thanks for such good questions. Yeah.
Thank you, Andie. And thank you so much for spending a little bit more time with me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. It was super fun. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Whew. I am still thinking about Andie's description of being underwater in the United States of America and how travel finally allowed her to come up for air. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the things that we think are holding us back, whether it's the weight of societal expectations or the fear of abandoning our roles, are actually nuanced choices where we are allowed to choose our own direction for survival. In a more recent follow-up conversation that I had with Andie, we dug even deeper into the narcissistic X vibe of America right now. That sense of being gaslit into staying in a situation that no longer supports our lives or our families. Because our first conversation sparked so many new questions, we've actually continued our conversations and our collaboration. We're going to be tackling everything from country fit to emotional transitions of moving abroad. I'll be sharing a lot more of the work she's doing, and you can actually see a recording that she and I are doing this very week, which will be a month later once this airs. It's going to be live, and I hope that you can follow along with some of the collaborations we do and her journey. You can find her Get Me Out of Here workshop on Instagram and Threads by following at One Daring Adventure. And if you're like me, currently staring at a spreadsheet of potential exit hatches, remember her two mottos: find the beauty and dare to live. Until next time, go rewrite the rules.